Today we'll be answering the $1,000,000 question of, as a startup, how do you disrupt incumbents? If you're trying to break into a market dominated by incumbents, today's session is absolutely for you. So without further ado, let's dive on right in. Hi, everyone. My name is Shuo Chen. I am a former founder, now investing in founders and teaching founders at Berkeley and Stanford. I'm also a board member here at Decode, the largest community of founders that's hosted between Berkeley and Stanford. And today we'll be covering how the smartest founders try to commoditize their competitors' products and the product complements. If you're trying to figure out, well, what exactly does that mean? Let's dive right in. So today, I want to start with the first tactic on how to compete when you have a lot of incumbents in the market that you're trying to break into. So first tactic for today is, how do you reduce the incumbent's pricing power? Well, you want to first of all start by identifying the critical layers that make this product possible. So you want to figure out, what do your current customers need in addition to the core product to make this product offering possible? Obviously, the core product is what your competitors already monetize, what the incumbents are already very good at. But you want to identify that layer first, because whatever the end product is depends on this critical layer for customers to be able to access it. For example, there might be certain types of software that depend on it being on an iPhone because it needs to be downloaded through the App Store, or that it is dependent on Chrome because it is a Chrome extension. You want to figure out, what is the critical layer underlying that product? Whether that be hardware, on an operating system, on a browser, on a device, or anything else. For example, if you look at an example in history, Netscape, one of the oldest browsers, it actually depended on server sales. So you want to figure out, what is that critical layer? And then after you've identified that critical layer, you want to figure out, how can you acquire or launch a competing product in that layer, and then make that product either open source, free, or drastically underpriced compared to what else is available out there. So again, continuing that Netscape browser example from earlier, in the early days, Microsoft, in order to break into this space, they ended up giving Internet Explorer, the browser, away for free instead of charging for browsers like some of its competitors were doing. So once you've identified that critical layer, you want to launch your own or acquire a competing product in that space and make it open source, give it away, or drastically underprice it. And once you do that, then you can start to integrate the free or low-cost complement to the core product offering alongside this product to help boost adoption. And this actually helps create a lock-in effect for your customers as well, because you're making that critical layer available. And so, of course, if they're going to access that, they're most likely also going to continue to use your product. And that helps you establish industry standards as well through some sort of bundling or open licensing option. So, for example, Google has done this in the most classic fashion, where they ended up open sourcing Android, and then they bundled it with search to protect its ads business. So, of course, you might say, well, hey, it looks like the examples we talked about so far, whether it's Netscape or Microsoft or Google, they all seem like much larger players in this space. And so, of course, they can afford to identify this critical layer, launch or acquire a competing product, and then obviously integrate the free or low-cost complement to this and establish their hold in the industry. But it's actually not just limited to the largest companies. Startups can absolutely leverage this as well, because a lot of these case studies that we cited just now were these companies in the early days when they were trying to break into this space. So, of course, this is not true for every single industry, but there are industries where you have prime opportunities to do this. So try to figure out, is there a critical layer that you can drastically underprice or give it away for free, or open source it completely, to allow you to have a really good competitive advantage in this space and reduce your competitors, the incumbents' pricing power in this space. So that's tactic one. Launching into tactic two. Tactic two is, you want to help your current customers lower their switching costs. So whether or not you do tactic one, it may or may not be a good fit for you depending on what specific market you're tackling. But tactic two is definitely relevant for you, because whoever you're trying to get your customers to switch from, especially since you're trying to disrupt incumbents, you want to make it as easy as possible for customers to switch from whoever they're currently using over to your new product. So you could do this through a number of different ways. You could do this through open sourcing key technologies, for example, to just make it really easy for your customers to migrate between providers. So, for example, Google open sourced a number of their products, pressured their competitors to actually adopt the same open source technology, and as a result, weakened lock-in for all their customers. You could also do things like building industry-wide partnerships to drive adoption of common standards by collaborating with other large players in this space to really push for adoption. You could potentially create frameworks that simplify integration and reduce the dependence that your current customers have on vendors. A really good example of that, especially with this current wave of AI, is how Anthropic had launched MCP, Model Context Protocol, which standardized AI data sharing, especially as AI models needed to access tools, and it made it easier for potential customers to switch between different AI models. So there are many new ways as a new startup that you can start to do this to lower switching costs for your current customers or your potential target customers. And of course, in this process, you can think about other ideas that might lower switching costs for your customers as well. Are there things that you can make it extra easy for them to hop over to you, whether it's data integration or just offering incentives if they want to jump over to you from a competitor? In fact, a fun case study of that in recent days is you actually see both newsletter platforms now competing with each other for customers who want to launch platforms, who want to launch newsletters on their platforms. And so you actually have these competitors that say, hey, if you come over from our competitor's platform, we'll provide you free integration, free migration of everything and make it extra easy. We'll do this process with you. So something to think about there. And that is all around tactic 2, which is how to lower switching costs for your customers. And taking us into tactic 3, this is all about simplifying onboarding for your customers. So if you want to bring your customers over, it's not just the switching costs, but also onboarding. You want to make it really, really easy for your customers to use you and pay you. So this is where you want to focus on reducing end user burdens. So making it as easy as possible, whether it's through the procurement process or actually implementing your product. So you want to help them with things like building in-house, bundling different features, whatever it is that they need to adopt your software or hardware, your solution offering for the specific use case. You want to also think about shifting costs from CapEx to OpEx. As in, instead of getting your users to pay for capital expenses upfront by having to buy a lot, you want to make it an operating expense so that you ease budget constraints and you reduce friction. So this whole goal is to move any sort of upfront purchases or upfront costs towards a pay-as-you-go kind of model. So your customers can switch over to you, test out your product, and figure out whether or not you're a good fit and test it out before they have to make too big of a commitment budget-wise. And lastly, you want to offer some kind of group incentive by aggregating demand and pooling resources more efficiently so you can offer a bigger incentive if a larger pool of customers decide to join you. So with that, we've covered some of the top tactics for thinking about disrupting incumbents, and that is all focused on reducing incumbents' pricing power, lowering switching costs for your customers, as well as simplifying onboarding for your potential customers. With that, if you want to learn about other traps to avoid in this process and tools that you can leverage to make it as easy as possible for you as a founder building a startup to disrupt incumbents in your existing space, please feel free to check out the link below and read more in our newsletter. With that, we would love to help you answer more questions in future sessions. So please feel free to continue to send us any additional questions via email, LinkedIn, or of course, comment on this video directly. And we look forward to covering your questions in a future session. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.